2024 was one of the greatest years in trans representation, and it may have just been the best year for representation, period. There were a large variety of trans films across so many genres. There was the existential and surrealist I Saw the TV glow centered around the idea of not accepting the life that would have made you the happiest, and being left a hollow husk at the inability to make the decisions that you need and conform to those around you. There was the superhero parody film The People's Joker, taking one of the most iconic villains in comic book history and using the Joker as a vessel to tell one of the most outrageously funny trans coming-of-age stories of all time. There were documentaries like Will and Harper that allowed us to sit in the vulnerability between two friends attempting to maintain closeness after one of those friends comes out as trans, and those two friends happen to be Will Ferrell and Harper Steele, former head writer of SNL. There were also films not centered around trans representation but held trans people in a positive light, like the action film Monkey Man. There were also low-budget horror films with trans representation like T-Blockers, or even the COVID-based dark comedy Stress Positions, which while I didn't love, I can appreciate for making part of just some of the most important films about transgender identity from the past year. And with all these films, there was bound to be one of them to make an appearance during the 2024 to 2025 award season, and I can't wait to see which one it is.
Emilia Pérez.
Emilia Pérez.
Emilia Pérez.
Emilia Pérez.
Emilia Pérez.
Ben, are you British?
Yeah.
Are you British?
I am.
Let me give you a British answer. It was my cup of tea.
Now, like any human with a soul or a brain, you might be wondering, how did a film like Emilia Pérez, such a monstrosity, get the acclaim and recognition that it did over the entire 2024 to 2025 award season at some of the most renowned shows there are, as well as the Caesar Awards, the BAFTA Awards, and also the Golden Globes? And if you're hearing this part of the introduction, and yes, I record multiple intros so that I was prepared for whatever happened Oscars night, Emilia Pérez did not have nearly as successful as a night at the Oscars as many had feared. Sure, Zoe Saldana won Best Actress and Al Mall won Best Original Song, but thank God I'm Still Here Flo won Best International Feature Film. But regardless, this film's name was called on the stage because it won 2 Oscars, so I feel the need to talk about Emilia Pérez being the most evil Oscar winner there is. I have not seen the several hundred films nominated across 97 years of awards. I just had to title this video in a way so that you'd click it and we could hate Emilia Pérez together. In order to pick at Emilia Pérez, I need to give you a full summary of the film with full spoilers. I'm sure that won't matter for any of you. I don't even know if the people clicking on this video will have seen Emilia Pérez or they're just avoiding it because of everything they've heard. I don't blame you for avoiding it. But I do hope you understand some of the absurdity as I share some of my unfiltered opinions. And yes, I do need to talk about how transphobic and anti-Mexican the entire film is. Speak a bit on the controversy surrounding its director and its lead star. Also speaking on how does a film like this get through the entire film festival circuit, getting nearly unanimous praise when all of a sudden it gets released to the general public and then it's trash. And I'm also going to give you a little treat at the end. I'm filming some of my reactions to the Oscars this year, so that way you'll see my face and the noises that I make whenever Emilia Pérez wins an award, or maybe when it doesn't. Hey everyone, it's actually the day after, so my reactions to all the Oscar wins were not that great, even considering just everything that happened with Emilia Pérez during the Oscars. I actually want to change the direction of the final bit of this video. So much happened during the press conference for Emilia Pérez after the Oscars played. Most people missed it, and I feel like we need to talk about that in this video, so that's the new ending of this video. Have fun, everybody. And I'll make this clear, this is not a normal video for me. This is not a video essay. This is mostly a rant. Sure, there's a script. Sure, there's something that I'm referring to. Sure, every single moment is calculated in the way that you don't often see, but I just need to hate on this film very publicly so you all were aware. I hate Emilia Pérez. But if you like videos like this or want to see video essays from me, do check out my other videos. Do like, do comment, share your thoughts about Emilia Pérez or the Oscars in 2025. Also subscribe, hit that bell, or follow me in any other places, including TikTok, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, and Instagram. And without further ado, let me share my summary of Emilia Pérez. The film opens with Rita Mora Castro, an attorney trying to get by in Mexico City, and after questioning her own conscience during a notable trial that she's a part of, Rita receives an incredible offer from an unknown client. Once having accepted the offer, Rita is kidnapped by a local cartel kingpin, and she is dead named here, but yes, this is Emilia Pérez. And for those looking at the video in front of them and not scrolling on their phones, yes, this is Karla Sofia Gasson. As an aside, I can't believe a trans actress would accept to portray herself in this way in front of the camera, but everyone's comfort level is different. This is also not even remotely close to what the focus of criticism against Gasson should be. Back to the film, after Emilia Pérez exposes her breasts to Rita in order to help her believe that she is a woman, we then enter the most transphobic part of the film, where Rita is sent to Bangkok in Israel in order to consult with a number of doctors that are willing to do essentially every single gender-affirming surgery under the sun, that Jacques Audiard was able to get to rhyme together in one of the most laughable musical numbers, period. Amelia is able to have all these surgeries happen at once after faking her own death and having her wife, played by Selena Gomez, and her children go to Switzerland in order to find some kind of protection. 4 years later, Emilia finds Rita and tells her to help her reunite with her kids. Amelia then pretends to be her own cousin so that way she can live with Selena Gomez, and the kids very, very quickly recognize that Amelia is actually their old parent, which is very flawed. I'm going to get into this later, and that Jessie, Selena Gomez's character, is actually sopping wet from being in Mexico City again to find a former lover that she had an affair with during the later parts of her marriage. I'm not being disgusting, I'm just paraphrasing in a way that won't get censored here, and that way the video doesn't get demonetized. Amelia decides that she's remorseful and decides to get all the cartel members she knows to help in creating a non-profit to help identify the bodies of those who are victims of the cartel. Rita then feels conflicted about this, and then we get the musical number El Mal, the musical number that is likely winning Best Original Song at the Oscars. And then for some reason, Emilia Pérez starts a relationship with a woman who lost her abusive husband to the cartel, and I guess everything Emilia did before was just completely just because of this. It's at this point Emilia finds out Jessie is going to run away and get married to her former lover, accidentally slips and called the children hers, and we have a shootout because Audiard has no idea how to end the movie in Mexico otherwise. Emilia Pérez then finally reveals herself to Jessie dead names her and misgenders her, has a complete change of heart, and then the car crashes, killing Jessie, Amelia, and Jessie's lover, Gustavo. Rita then adopts Jessie and Amelia's children, and Amelia's lover from earlier in the movie then eulogizes Amelia, and then the film ends. I'm sorry, I've seen this movie twice, but I'm still so shocked both times I've seen this movie just how abruptly it ends. I never thought I'd say this, but just for a moment, let's entertain the thought of why did Emilia Pérez get as many awards nominations as it did, including as many Oscars as it did, and I think it's very important to get that because I completely understand, even if I hate the movie, why it got those nominations, and I think you need to too. In a world where the modern blockbuster or movies being crafted for streaming are made on an assembly line, shot poorly because they know that you're on your phone most of the time watching them or in the other room folding laundry, so why bother? And to be designed around actors that you're already familiar with a set structure that doesn't challenge any of the conventions of filmmaking or genre, general audiences, filmmakers, and critics gravitate towards the new, or at least they say that they do, or find themselves wanting to appreciate a film that goes out of its way to not be like anything else that you've seen, and regardless of your potential tolerance or dislike of Emilia Pérez, there'll be no other film like it. And Audiard is a well-respected director. He won the Palme d'Or for D-Pen in 2015, is also known for many of his other films, including A Prophet. This attention with even his name made the Netflix film have even more attention than it would have if it were directed by anyone else. Another element that certainly adds some interest to the film is the fact that many early critics couldn't name a genre attached to the film, with some people calling it a gangster trans dramedy musical, and that there was a bit for everybody because it was tackling so many different genres. It's also really fascinating, and this is just one metric, but I want to talk about how the reception to Emilia Pérez has shifted over time. On March 1st, Emilia Pérez has a 2.1 average on Letterboxd. This is also the Saturday before the Oscars to give context. Going back to January 31st, it is at a 2.3. December 15th, a 3.1. The day of its Netflix premiere, November 13th, a 3.5. On August 2nd, after premiering at several festivals, it had a 3.7. And 2 days after its Cannes premiere on May 18th, there was no calculated score, but the majority of scores were a 5, a rarity at any festival at any level for any film. Now at festivals, you can go days without food, chugging coffee, eating what snacks that you can sneak in before gorging on a massive end-of-day meal, and at Cannes, there is no popcorn, there is nothing. You are in a delirious state after seeing dozens of films in days, and maybe that's why Peter de Bruges of Variety described Karla Sofia Gasson as electric, and why David Rooney of The Hollywood Reporter described the film as having an Almodovarian humor, a film with warmth, a film about being authentic to yourself and choosing the life that's right for you. And Jesus Christ, I can't believe I'm comparing this film to I Saw the TV Glow, but that comparison feels true here as I'm hearing this. And at other festivals, some critics were calling this one of the best films of the year. Lots of people had incredibly high expectations for that film. It's a November release on Netflix because of those glowing reviews. Many of the positive reviews I know from that early Cannes premiere focus on the form of the film and how different it is and how new it is, without ever actually speaking to the qualities of the film or how well any of this is executed. How many transgender film critics or Mexican film critics do you know were being invited to these festivals that were mostly taking place in Europe and also the United States? Leading up to the film's release, I heard murmurs, I heard rumors, I heard all sorts of things on the internet, but no one would very openly speak out loud about them. I knew of several trans and or Mexican critics who alluded to their dislike of the film on social media, but then held off on their opinions until closer to the film's general release, mostly because they were on their own about their opinions. But looking at the negative reviews from those those early festival screenings, while few, even the ones not speaking on the offensive nature of the film, point out that the majority of these performances are nothing to write home about, and not a single musical number in this film is memorable. No one is out there listening to the Emilia Pérez soundtrack on repeat over and over again like they would for Hamilton or Wicked. It's a waste of time for all the awards attention this film was given, and I just want to say this: Selena Gomez is horrendous. There's no way I can sneak this into the video gently or naturally, I just have to say this: she is so bad in this movie, but her performance in this film was one of the least memorable in years, an embarrassment that she was campaigned for Best Supporting Actress and had at least one nomination at the Golden Globes. Sorry, just had to get that off my chest, but I want to say this: despite my critiques of the movie, despite my issues with all the musical numbers and just the overall content of the film and how offensive it is, this film, worst of all, is just boring. This is not a film to point and laugh at because it's so bad it's good. There are maybe 40 to 50 minutes of that before the film shifts into being one of the most obnoxious melodramas it could be, filled with the most lifeless characters and performances. But we can't ignore how offensive this all is. To shift back to the criticism from Mexican and trans critics, I want to specifically highlight that of Juan Barquin, a critic who wrote a review for Little White Lies, and not to have them specifically become a target if the wrong people find this video, but they are a trans Mexican critic that does have a review in English, and not to paraphrase their review in their entirety, please go check it out. But they name a lot of the similar points that I've had this whole time. They specifically name that the film has poor choreography, and also that the film in every fabric is offensive and laughable. Not a unique perspective on the film at all. It is bad. This is not the first person to say it is bad. But this weirdly made Barquin a target for Karla Sofia Gozon, and to me, this is where the downfall of her Oscars campaign came about and really set the stage for everything that was to come with the reveal of her Twitter. On January 6th of this year, in a Vanity Fair article, Gozon directs her attention to specifically trans writers and critics who have spoken out about her movie, saying if you don't like it, go and make your own movie. A piece of criticism I'm sure that will not backfire upon her in any way possible. Karla then ends up trying to frame all this as people trying to take away her autonomy or hating just for the sake of hating, because the film is popular and viewing the film outside of its context. Now, there is an issue of people engaging with art outside of context, people watching clips of movies without watching the entire movie, people reading reviews and thinking they're informed on a movie, or sometimes people seeing clips of a movie in a movie theater and thinking they had the ideal experience watching it. In the case of Emilia Pérez, I saw a number of specifically white cisgender critics take issue with this here, but to them and to Karla's point, the penis to vagina song is bad regardless of the context of you watching it in or outside of the movie. This is the one movie I'd argue that you gain a little more context if you just watch it in the context of the movie. That speaks to how disjointed this movie is. But it's really at the tail end of January when journalist Sarah Haji uncovers a number of tweets from Karla Sofia Gozon, mostly finding them just from doing a precursory search of various terms on her Twitter. I've said this on other parts of the internet: Western European racism is old world racism, and what was found left my jaw hanging. There were a number of disgusting tweets justifying the death of George Floyd. There were a number of tweets critiquing Islam. Many tweets critiquing Islam. And before deleting or at least deactivating her Twitter page, she left many of those tweets up, seemingly not taking issue with them or missing them through her search. And a number of tweets that some are questioning if they're true or if they're taken outside of context. And again, her Twitter's gone, so we don't know, but these tweets were about Hitler and her co-star Selena Gomez, not together but separately in two separate issues, with one of them being much worse than the other. In all my years of following the Oscars or all these award shows, I've never seen someone publicly crash out to this level so close to the actual ceremony. Netflix mounted a supposed $30 million ad campaign for the film, and they couldn't bother to have someone just mass delete all of her tweets with many of the apps that exist across the world, or hire publicists that could interview her and talk to her about anything that may come up, or get her to get off her Twitter account before she released multiple apologies that made this issue far worse than denying any responsibility, including also going on CNN and speaking about this. And in all of these apologies, she has severely underplayed the horrendous nature of these tweets, and also trying to say this was a long time ago. Lady, you were tweeting about Muslims in a post-COVID world. This was in the past couple of years. I didn't even mention the only awful thing she said about COVID or vaccines or Asian people. I'm not saying any of this is okay, or Netflix or any other corporation should cover up any celebrity awfulness. I'm just saying it's stupid that they didn't think this far ahead. I do want to name this too. While there isn't any real precedent for this at all, or at least I'm not familiar with, I think they should have pulled Karla's nomination. I think while Netflix deciding no longer to fund her travel to award shows felt important, she's still coming to the Oscars and she's still going to be there, and they're also still funding this trip. Because of all this being uncovered, they had to completely shift the format of the Oscars. Instead of having former winners coming back introducing each of the nominees, instead they had to get just the former winner to come back because they couldn't do an individual introduction for Karla Sofia Gozon. And I fully believe Karla should be held accountable. I don't believe anything different in that. But I also want to say this, and I want to say this with a lot of nuance, so please grasp onto this. She is also being made an example of. A cisgender artist would not be treated this way. I'm not trying to defend her. I'm not trying to use some kind of whataboutism. I'm just trying to say this. It's very interesting that they made an example out of the first trans female nominee. Based on the director's own comments about Mexicans, Mexico, and Mexican culture, as well as the fact that he firmly believed that no Mexican actors could have done any of the roles of the movie that we're talking about today, I can guarantee he believes at least a little bit of what Gaston believes and has framed a lot of the conversation around how dare she do this to us and make us look bad. And there's also just a number of people online responding by misgendering her, which no is not valid and sets up the precedent of dehumanizing any trans person that you disagree with. Karla's racism, xenophobia, and Islamophobia is deeply disgusting and is unforgivable, and resorting to the same transphobia in order to get back at her, quote unquote, doesn't really do anything except being transphobic. And speaking of transphobia, let's talk about transness in the film, because what do you know about Emilia Pérez after watching this movie? And maybe it's because I'm paying more attention to film criticism this year than ever, but I've noticed the word interiority being added to the vocabulary of many, and there's been a question if Mikey Madison was given enough space to provide depth to the titular character of Honora, or if in a complete unknown, do we really know all that much more about Bob Dylan and any of the colorful characters in his life after watching the movie? But I think the worst offender of this entire year is Emilia Pérez. Emilia is also decentralized so much in her own movie. If you haven't seen it, they clearly nominated and petitioned for Karla to be the lead of the film for the sake of the historic nomination. I get that it's a huge deal, but Rita Zoe Saldana's character is really the lead of the film. And on top of this, we know nothing about these people other than how they exist in this limited and hobbled together framework of this film. They're basically shades of characters. They are all stereotypes. None of them are meaningful people. For any other movie, this is a non-issue, but for a trans character like Emilia Pérez, it leads to a movie that's obsessed with transness in the ways that many cisgender people are. Even when first being Emilia, there's a focus on the appearance of her body, her gender being questioned by Rita, and then there's just the response of Emilia to expose her breasts in order to prove it all, and I feel like that's an insane thing that no trans person would ever do. And at face value, this is all bad, but I think this proves the key issue of the film. Emilia Pérez is so secondary in her entire film that it makes her transness an accessory to a film about change, treating transition as any other kind of change, which is not the same. Transitioning is about finding the comfort in your overall gender expression to reduce your overall gender dysphoria as much as you can, but you are not changing yourself, you are finding your true self. And whether we think about the film being fixated on Emilia Pérez's breast for this 1 second, or the following song about being all these gender-affirming surgeries that Emilia is going to have take place at the same time for some weird reason, and sure, many people can have multiple gender-affirming surgeries at the same time, but Emilia Pérez is essentially in a full body cast after receiving all these surgeries. I think there's an immediate conflation throughout this entire sequence where the entirety of trans people's experiences are rooted in trans medicalism, or that transness is rooted entirely in the need for medical transition, and for some people it also conflates this idea that, oh, all you need to do is change your body and that's it. You get the surgery and everything is good. That is not true. That is not how transness or gender dysphoria work. Not every trans person experiences dysphoria in that way, regardless of what label they fall under in the trans umbrella. And even from the trans medical lens, so much is misunderstood about gender and transness, even amongst these doctors and Rita. Emilia is a woman. There is no need to dead name her. There is no need to misgender her. She is not secretly a man. She is a woman. In all movies, there's always a chance to have flawed characters. There are people who will misgender people. There are people who dead name people. These people exist in real life. They exist in movies. Not every time is a movie endorsing these ideas, but in this case, it's very clear there is no understanding of gender at all. There's also this weird framing of transitioning as like flipping a switch or being the death of a person. Again, that is flawed thinking, not thinking that there isn't a trans person who thinks like this, but this is not reflective of the trans experience. Also, I talked about the kids saying that Emilia smells like their parents. HRT changes the way that you smell. Sure, I guess you could use the same detergent on our clothes, but again, how do you get this one basic fact wrong unless you know nothing? And maybe the most egregious bit, I know people joke about being gay and doing crimes, but in this current political climate, it is beyond irresponsible to have Emilia Pérez courted her wife while she was a minor. This is horrible transphobic rhetoric, point blank, and my god, it is a detail that I'm so glad happened so late in the film that most people tune out because of that. And speaking of not understanding who the film is about, the director did not research about Mexico before going to the film at all.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah, thanks. That girl's part Mexican.
Really? How can you tell?
I have an affinity for Mexicans. They're like my favorite people. I love Mexico. I've been down there twice.
And aside from Emilia Perez's love interest later in the film, no one is of Mexican descent in this movie. He is exploring a narrative about cartels and violence in Mexico without ever making it clear the gravity of the violence and the plight of the thousands of missing people due to this violence. And while I knew some of this going into the film just because I had friends who took Spanish class in high school and also college, I took French because I wanted to be different. None of our characters have accents to indicate that they're from Mexico, and sure, there's a couple of offhand comments that make this very clear. It still doesn't make it all that great. And in an article from butwhythough.net, it is made clear that there's multiple phrases named in the movie that are just terribly Google translated phrases and aren't actually phrases that you'd hear from Mexicans. It is all set dressing, just like anything that you'd see with trans identity in the film. I just want to name, there are many people online who are qualified who can be much more informative on this specific issue and can point you to films that have much more tasteful representation. Guys, this movie is just so bad, and at the time of writing, I have no idea what it will win. My guess is 2 Oscars at best, but I don't know if people thought Green Book was going to win in 2018, so maybe I will be wrong, and that is horrible. And when comparing this to other films like Green Book or Crash or Driving Miss Daisy that have offended people in the past, why do I think this one is so evil compared to the rest? Because we know better. Maybe not the people making these exact films, but we have hindsight. We can reflect. We may not be Oscar voters, but considering how few films about transness identity enter the public consciousness, it is appalling to me that Emilia Perez is the one film that got here. Forgive me, I'm exhausted doing this. I'm going to stop. I'm not going to do this anymore. I have no idea how coherent this video is in the edit, so whatever. I have a migraine that spawned from how much I hate this movie. I want to make this clear. I don't get a migraine very often when I'm watching movies unless it's really, really bad. And this is one of them, and I felt this way writing the script, and I feel this way recording right now. Whatever way you felt about this video, maybe you got a headache too. Hopefully you give me a follow or a subscribe. Maybe you'll share this with somebody who also equally hates the movie, or someone you know that loves the movie and you want to change their mind. Send this to them. Sure, this will probably be like 20 minutes or something. I don't know. But anyways, that's it for now. Please take care, and I guess I'll share some of my reactions from Oscars night. So here you go. Let's see how many Emilia Perez won. So 1, what a ceremony. What a night. Obviously, Emilia Perez did not do as great as I think some people expected. I think, you know, kind of conservatively, most people thought that it'd win Best Supporting Actress and Best Original Song, which it did, but did in fact lose Best International Film to I'm Still Here, which is fantastic. Great night for everything else. Glad that Emilia Perez lost everything. And forgive me, this is off the cuff, this is not scripted, but I do want to talk about what happened a little bit during the awards. First of all, the El Mal win for Best Original Song. What a cringy speech. One of the worst speeches in Oscars history. I've never seen anybody win Best Original Song and try to play off getting played off on stage by singing the song and trying to get the audience to sing the song. Nobody knows the music to Emilia Perez. Please be more self-aware. And yeah, wow. And 2, this is the stuff that happened after the Oscars, right? So Audiard was actually asked to give some kind of statement or some kind of thoughts about what's happening with trans people across the globe right now, especially in the United States, when it comes to, you know, what this movie is about, having a trans person being the lead of the film. He said if he'd won Best Picture or Best Director, he would have said something, and then after being given the space to say something, he says nothing. Wow, it is empty, it's performative, it shows that he really just wants to be there to win these awards, as is most people who worked on this film. No one who's on that stage, whether we're talking about Zoe Saldana or whoever won the award for Best Original Song, said anything about trans people. That says everything about this film and how transphobic it actually is. And even more interestingly, during the press conference for Zoe Saldana's win for Best Supporting Actress, there was actually a Mexican journalist who pushed back against her, saying, you know what, there's a lot of anti-Mexican sentiment about the film that gets overshadowed by the transphobic sentiment, which is true. Right? I'm even acknowledging this with my video, and that just speaks to my competency around trans issues versus Mexican issues. I'm not a Mexican person, therefore it's not appropriate for me to speak on that. There are many other videos on the topic on YouTube. Please do check them out. But when listening to this feedback, Zoe Saldana says, you know what, I'm listening to you. I should listen to Mexican people more about this movie. But, you know, I think you're misconstruing what this movie is about. It's not about a country. It's not about Mexico. It's about 4 women in any country in the world, right? And compares them to, I think, women in Germany or Israel or Gaza for some strange reason. And essentially all lives matters, all women, which is not true. The experiences of women all across the globe are so different, whether we're talking about trans women or Mexican women who are being affected by the cartels that are down there, and to kind of conflate that with your own experiences, well, that's just not really taking a very intersectional approach to feminism. It's shocking, it's embarrassing. I'm still distilling all my thoughts, but I want to say this, wow. If there's only a couple of things to break down what's wrong with this movie, it's actually the speeches given about the film and the responses that were given by the director and the supporting, or I guess lead star of the film, because that's really Zoe Saldana. Embarrassment, off the cuff, forgive me for this kind of unedited kind of portion of the video. What a night. I'm done. I'm done with the Oscars. I'm glad I don't have to talk about some of these movies anymore, and certainly I hope none of us talk about Emilia Pérez anymore after this.